Good morning. I'm Andrew Slegamelch. I'm a clinical psychologist, and you might recall a previous video I made on how to give advice. It's called How to Give Advice, I believe. If you haven't been to my new website yet, check it out at docschleg.com. It's the featured video there. Some of you perhaps tried out my recommendation and outright asked people if they wanted advice or just someone to listen to them. I hope that when you did that, some people actually said they wanted your advice. But this likely brought up another issue for you. Despite asking for advice, people don't take it. I hear this all the time from people. I warn other people about asking for advice and continually turning it down or not following advice, because it's a good way to exasperate people, and then people just basically stop giving you advice even when you ask for it. But how about those times when you know people are asking for help, you offer help in the form of advice, and they don't take it? How do you make sense of this? What's wrong with these people? Are they selfish? Are they foolish? Vacuous, even? I admit it is tempting, and it was my main go-to for literally decades, to just conclude that people cannot appreciate how amazing I am and learned and experienced, and therefore they are just not ready for my advice. That belief, however, made the actual truth all the more challenging for me to digest. The truth of the matter is that most of the time we give advice, we don't actually understand the situation being described or the question being asked. People do not take our advice. People not taking our advice is less likely the result of their foolishness and more likely the low quality of advice being given. So why do we give bad advice? I think it has to do with how our brain works, and I will not go into this into great of detail, but our brains are designed to come to logical and good enough conclusions without all the actual available information. We use inference, make leaps based on logic, and actively fill in gaps and missing data. This is a very efficient way to process and react to our chaotic environment. But it's terrible for determining how to respond to someone else's experience. In a sense, we make guesses about what people are telling us, and often our good enough criteria is not really good enough at all, and thus our advice is bad. Further evidence of the foolishness of the good enough approach is that the person asking for advice has already used the good enough approach because their brain works basically the same way and they came up short. They are not dumb, they are truly stumped and need someone to use a different method for determining the next course of action. So that's why they're asking you for advice. So how do we remedy this? First, you've confirmed they actually want advice, not just someone to unload on. If you give advice to a person who just wants to unload on you, they're probably less likely to follow that advice because they're not actually asking for advice. They're just looking to unload in the form of something that sounds like advice. So verify that they actually want advice. Next, you need to make sure you have a very good understanding of the situation. Before anything creeps out of your mouth in the form of advice, I highly recommend you say, and I quote, "So what you're telling me is," and then go ahead and fill in the blank. Reflect back to them what you heard and verify it is correct. Ask them if they agree with the summary that you just made. More often than not, you will notice they will need to correct something or rephrase something or say it, use more exposition or whatever, and then you do it again. So what you're saying is, and you do it in kind of a respectful tone and just making sure that you're getting the story as correct and exact as you can. An interesting artifact that I have discovered when using this technique, and you may also discover, I certainly hope you do, is that simply restating the issue or the problem or the question in your own words can actually lead to insight in the individual asking for help. When you do your summary, the person listening to your summary might have some insight. A light bulb might go on for them. It's kind of an interesting process. There's a saying I learned in my training years and have applied throughout my personal and professional life, and it goes, in quotes, "You don't know because you don't ask." I want to exhort you to show interest in people's experiences and thoughts. Be quick to listen and slow to give advice. And finally, even and especially in these challenging and stressful times, do not grow tired of doing good. Thank you so much for watching.